I was just gonna say, I think that makes the most sense. So I'm Robyn Wood. I'm on the business development team, and I'm gonna be taking you through the values aligned direct indexing solution that we've collaborated with First Affirmative on. And my sort of co-host or my colleague for the day, Ken, is joining me. He's graciously agreed to do this webinar with us and just help to show and explain a little bit more in depth from his perspective what using this solution, is like, and when he talks with clients, kind of how he brings this into the discussion and things like that. So we're really thankful and appreciative for Ken to join us. But Ken, if you want to give a quick intro on yourself, that'd be great.
Thank you, Robyn. That was a very thorough intro. And yeah, I'm here to support with some real world experience of the prospect to client pipeline using the YourStake tool, as well as the support and management of First Affirmative, which I'm an IAR at First Affirmative. I've been with them at some capacity for going on, I think, about 6 years now. And I'm very grateful for all the support and valuable wisdom and insight that they've gathered over the 30 years of business in this space. And we're just kind of looking at the pinnacle, the apex of their work here. And we're going to walk you through the prospect to client pipeline using the VADIS direct indexing solution and the Values Hub and Advisor Core.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, and Robyn, as you want to get slides up,
Yep.
thank you to everyone that sent questions beforehand. We will kind of save a lot of time for Q&A at the end of this event. However, we want this to be helpful, interactive, discussion-led. So while we have some slides, some demo, and kind of talking through a bunch of stuff, do not hesitate at all to hit the raise your hand, and put a question on the message board through Zoom, or just simply unmute yourself and stop us at any point to say, hey, can you go into that? I have a question, exactly about this part. We really want this to be helpful for you wherever you are in your VADIS journey, whether you're still learning about the solution, or just getting it online, or you haven't really used it in a while, and want to see some new things. So please feel free to join in the conversation at any point. We're here to be helpful throughout the journey. But with that, Robyn, do you want to get started on kind of orientation, agenda, all that good stuff?
Yeah. Want to do quick check to make sure you all can see my screen. I kind of collapsed my video bar.
It looks great.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think, getting started here, just to quickly go through, like Jack said, give you a lay of the land here of what we're going to be doing. Just want to review this agenda real quick. Intros, got through that already, but we're going to do just a quick and very brief overview of what direct indexing is, the advantages of it, and of course, the further advantage of a values-aligned direct indexing solution. We'll go through the workflow, where I'll be presenting and sharing a demonstration of the workflow, like what you would go through. And then, of course, we'll be getting Ken's sort of perspective commentary as well. I'll be asking him a lot of questions about, his process that he typically goes through when doing this. We'll talk a little bit about the proxy voting and shareholder advocacy efforts that come with this solution, which I think is something that is a huge value add. Is not only are we able to deliver a values aligned portfolio, or a portfolio that takes into account someone's personal values, but then also carrying through with shareholder advocacy efforts and the proxy voting. And then, of course, time for discussions and Q&A. So to kind of get this started here, just a quick and, very quick, you'll get these slides. I believe, Jack, we're going to have these slides available along with the recording afterwards, so you can take a little bit of time to actually read through these. But, what is direct indexing? And does my client have to own every stock in an index? No. There's optimization techniques, which we'll discuss a little bit, further and in depth as we go through the demo. But really what this does is it is a method to replicate an index performance by purchasing or using individual stocks or companies instead of buying an ETF or a prepackaged mutual fund. And with that, you can tailor to particular preferences. And then, of course, some advantages of direct indexing, as this slide demonstrates, we're really able to get more tax efficiency and customization by owning those individual stocks or those individual companies, rather than with mutual funds and ETFs. Those companies, we're not able to pick and choose what we'd like to have for either the tax efficiency or customization aspect. And then again, we'll talk about this a little bit during the demo, but some of the tax benefits of direct indexing, which is tax loss harvesting, of course, customization of not only the holdings, but the execution of or avoiding execution of taxable events, things like that. And with continued tax management as well, not just in the initial optimization, but throughout the journey of the entire relationship. So, with that, some of the advantages of values-aligned direct indexing solution and some ways to implement it. So you can do that. We like to look at it here of, a few ways that you can really present to this or talk with clients, prospects that may be interested in having a more personalized portfolio. And you can do that with maybe starting with your own firm's values. Maybe you've got sort of a baseline where, these are some great options or some great screening options for screening out or screening in particular value preferences, along with personas. So maybe someone is a, planet protector or environmental steward. And that is sort of a persona that can be used either on its own or with other personas, like a health defender persona. And then what we're really going to show today is sort of the bespoke customization for each individual, that has their own unique values and investment goals and needs, this bespoke sort of customization route. And kind of what sets it apart, as I mentioned before, not just creating an optimized portfolio for each individual, but also very low minimums on account values, as well as the ongoing, rebalancing of the portfolios. Each year someone's values may change, life events happen. So that's all taken into consideration. And of course, any kind of tax transition or ongoing tax loss harvesting. And then of course, the shareholder advocacy efforts, and of course, proxy voting, which we can, again, you can kind of take a look at some of these slides after the demo, but we just wanted to show up just, some examples of how the folks at First Affirmative really put a lot of work and effort into ensuring that not only the investments in a portfolio are, are what makes the most sense for each client, but and their values, but also voting the proxies appropriately with that in mind, with those values in mind, as well as, their ongoing shareholder and advocacy, really what they're doing. So I think that's excellent. So going through the VADIS workflow, very simple, simplistic, streamlined, really kind of a three-step process. And you start with discovering those clients' values or what are their value preferences. Moving into, great, let's include that and optimize a portfolio, and then implementing it. So we're going to go through that workflow here now. And this is where I'll queue up Ken. If you are sort of want to make sure that you're ready. I see you now. Okay. And want to make sure that everyone can still see my screen here. We are now within the YourStake login. And this is where I think Ken and I are going to get to have a lot of fun talking. I know that I've had a lot of fun getting prepared for this and going through, the different scenarios and things that you actually get to do. We here at YourStake kind of get to live through your experience. So this has been a really enjoyable, just getting to do preparing for this and now actually getting to do it. So so Ken, when you are with maybe a new prospect or a new client, what is kind of and this is just so I can start getting this queued up a little bit, the demonstration. So I wanted to quickly get your thoughts and views and your experience on how do you introduce this topic to, a prospect, maybe someone that comes to you with certain values in mind, or is maybe just, I want to own, good companies, or I want my portfolio to be good. How do you kind of work this particular solution, or really just talking about values alignment with those prospects or clients that come to you?
Right. So in our initial consultation, we'll get to know the client a little bit better, and then set up another meeting to go through the values picker together. And that's really when we'll discover their experience, and it'll spark many different conversations. So we can go through the first stage of the process and, input their first and last name, the account value. And I believe in this case, Robyn, we're selecting it's going to be a Roth. So say they also have a individual taxable account that's also going to come over, but in this particular case, it's going to be a Roth. So we'll manage that from the household level. And so the allocation will be skewed to mostly equities in this Roth. Correct, Robyn?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I like to kind of have, some things set up, but just as Ken said, this is a really great scenario that we kind of wanted to walk you through that is, a common scenario where, there's more than one account. And, not only can this solution work for the overall, at the household level or multiple accounts, but it can be, one account itself too. So you've got, quite a bit of flexibility in here. And what I've done is just entered the baseline details, to get this in here and really kick off the workflow of VADIS. So after you've entered that initial detail, and we go to this next page, which is the values discovery step. And Ken, I think this is what you were talking about, how when you work with your clients, you are with them going through one of these questionnaires to kind of get, a little bit more familiar with that prospect or that brand new client. I want to just let the folks on the call know we have two ways to go about that. So we have our behavioral values questionnaire, which is 16 questions long. A lot of you, if not all of you on this call right now, have probably seen at least the entire questionnaire. You use the questionnaire or you've seen it before. And we also have a values picker. The main difference between these two, I think, really is with the behavioral values questionnaire, you're going to match up to some of those personas, planet protector persona, health defender persona. So as someone's going through this questionnaire, they're coming to some personas that we have sort of predetermined. We being YourStake, working with First Affirmative to say someone that has a planet protector type persona really probably has these focus areas, or these are some things that we want to look at or consider screening in or out of the portfolio. And then the values picker is a way where you can, start with some screens that the First Affirmative team has put together, which I think is a fantastic place to start because, as Ken kind of mentioned early on the call, so much experience in this space. This is a fantastic start to see or to present to your clients or prospects, a broad list of things that they may want to have considered in the construction of their portfolio. So we're going to take a look at that. I'm kind of the prospect right now, clicking on, let's start here with this screen set, and we'll go through this. So in this screen set, as a prospect, do you see some, I guess, commonalities? Do you see some particular issue areas here that a lot of your prospects or clients are sort of choosing?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely on the individual level. Everyone's different, and oftentimes this particular VADIS screen, this set of screens will really get to allow you to get to know your client much better. I mean, it's much better to read the book than just look at it on the shelf. So this is really where you get to know your client. So many different conversations will spark from this. People never even thought of some of these, that this was even available to them in the majority of cases, that this level of thought has been put into just this set of screens. So we can go down the list and go through each one of these. And it's such a broad compilation that would make up a perspective such as this. So oftentimes I do find people selecting all of them, which won't be an issue at all. You can select all of them and also have a list of individual corporations that you'd like to exclude from the portfolio, and First Affirmative is able to accommodate that. And so,
that's also, something that we talked about too as we were getting ready for this is, just this being such a broad set of screens, and even selecting every single one of them, which, as you mentioned, seems to happen. But then also this broad sort of set of issue areas really opening up that opportunity for conversation, kind of making that building, deepening that relationship here, and just having things to talk about when you are going through this. And I have to imagine, but you'll have to let me know if I'm wrong, when you're going through this, those, sort of deepening the conversation, learning more about that prospect or that client. I imagine there's some things on here that will really hit, and you can pause in and talk about and get a little bit more detail, so that after going through this, maybe we want to see if there are some additional things that we might want to incorporate into or out of the portfolio.
Definitely. Yeah, this is really the baseline, even though it is quite in depth for as far as screening goes. This is
Mhm.
really just the surface of the ocean here. When
Mhm.
you really look into it, YourStake has done a tremendous job of gathering data from non-governmental organizations, academia. It's not just a top-down approach. This is really aggregating data from everywhere you can imagine in order to get a comprehensive view of the world and what our money is doing on Earth. And
Yep.
so when someone comes to the table and they're hyper aware of that they care about where their money is having impact on this planet, we can accommodate that.
Mhm.
So it's really a very unique tool in order to accommodate someone whose awareness has grown to the point where they just can't invest blindly.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of the work that, First Affirmative has put into looking at all of these sort of issues and things that your state can screen for, and then knowing, okay, selecting some of these metrics is going to, remove these certain types of companies or these specific companies, or it's going to, in the case of, inclusionary screening, looking for the best companies, making sure those, are in the portfolio. But I think just the amount of depth that they've, gone into for research and seeing what each of these metrics on their own or screens on their own, but then coupled with other ones will do is really impressive to see. But so now kind of going back through the workflow of this, the prospect took the, questionnaire. This is a nice list of values that are important to this particular prospect. So what we do now as the advisor, we save that. And then, sorry, I clicked around a little too quick. We save that. And, in this workflow, you do have the opportunity, maybe during that discussion, a particular company was mentioned that they want to make sure is included or alternatively excluded from the portfolio. So you can certainly enter those company ticker symbols here. And those will be taken into account when the portfolio is being optimized. A lot of times, based upon the values, those companies may get excluded or included just based upon the value screening part. But to make sure that something is included or isn't included for whatever the reason may be. I might work for, a particular company, or I previously worked for a company and I just don't want to have additional exposure, or,
Or a large legacy position that they're carrying
yeah,
over that will be using the tax transition tool in order to
exactly.
diversify those holdings.
Yep,
It doesn't have to be specifically for values. Yeah.
exactly. Yep, yep. That's excellent. So we have the option to fine tune. So I really like this option. Um, if these are the values that were selected from the values picker, and maybe this particular prospect, through the deeper conversation that we were having while taking that questionnaire, I know we sped through it a little bit quicker, but having that deeper conversation, led to maybe some mention of the prospect really didn't want much to do with plastics, or their, efforts outside of their investment portfolio is cleaning up beaches or something. So they just don't want to have companies producing single-use plastics in their portfolio. So I can come in here and click that. That wasn't, on the values picker, but I see it in here. I can make sure it's incorporated in the portfolio. Or maybe we talked about nuclear power exposure and wanting to avoid those types of companies in the portfolio. you can just click those on. And as an advisor, if I'm unsure, what this really covers, I can just click on it, companies that produce plastics. And then, nuclear power, what all does that cover? So I get a little bit more detail there as well. So I think this looks like a pretty good value set. Another thing I like to point out too is this metric meter. So we see that it's green right now. So a green metric meter is, green is good, red is bad, or red is, proceed with caution. And then of course we've got yellow in there. So in the case of I've got maybe a prospect with a really broad value set and they're selecting everything from the values picker plus other metrics. What happens is our investable universe gets smaller and smaller. We're eliminating a lot of companies in a particular sector or market cap. So this is a really great guideline for me as the advisor to say, well, okay, we've picked a lot of things that that you're wanting to avoid or include in this particular portfolio. And it looks like we're likely to have, a very small or mid-cap biased portfolio. Ken, do you ever get into those types of situations or conversations with clients where they've selected so many things that we've got, green or red metric meter to where you have a conversation with them about maybe, do we prioritize some of these things? Do we own some of these companies since we're going to have, proxy voting incorporated in this portfolio as well? What do
Right.
those conversations look like?
Those conversations are rare, but they do occur. And I can modify a real world prospect to client situation. This particular client is a filmmaker, and he's seen a lot, and he's done multiple documentaries, and he has very specific exclusions, and he's not budging from those exclusions. Some of those exclusions make up the bulk of the gains in the large cap sector, mega cap, and it's really going to affect the performance of the portfolio. And we're able to modify the effect of that performance and really get it fine-tuned so that they can have those particular exclusions. And using these modifiers here, we can fine-tune it. And that's where First Affirmative comes in. When you do get a difficult situation where you'd like to appease the client's needs, and at the same time you really want to you're really focused on their financial goals. Teresa and Sarah will really assist you in providing a solution for them, and it has worked in the past, and they're able to do that. So and also,
I think that's
there is a very important aspect is if they don't if they're not happy with some of their holdings in particular, First Affirmative is going to be drafting shareholder resolutions and voting proxies, obviously with the limits and regulations to the hold time and the amount, but that's another conversation to bring up in the conversation.
I think to add, Nigel had asked a question that I think flows really well into this. He had asked, I only have one client who has completed the values questionnaire, and they seem to have selected everything. I'm trying to rank their concerns. To do this, I'm looking at their raw responses, CSV. This seems kind of clunky. Is there a better way to rank and prioritize their values? And I think that you covered a little bit of this, but maybe Robyn, Ken, sharing your experience would be great here, and where First Affirmative could be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, that can happen where everyone sort of selects everything under the sun because it's presented, it's available. And sometimes it's it's, at least in conversations that I've had with, other advisors that utilize VADIS, is talking with the client, kind of, referencing a little bit what Ken said, trying to determine, what is most important? What are some hard no's, some hard yeses? Other advisors have mentioned, okay, let's pretend that this is, 35 metrics. Why don't we try and, reduce that down? Let's really look into what I, cannot have represented in the portfolio. And if it is represented, well, then maybe, that's where the proxy voting shareholder advocacy efforts sort of come into play. So I think not all is lost. If everything is selected, maybe some company exposure to certain things works. While then we say, and then, we're going to incorporate these other aspects of
and Robyn, that's really why I like starting with the VADIS screens, because you can select all of the VADIS screens, which are inclusionary and exclusionary, and still not end up with a red metric meter. And so, that's really why those are designed that way. And so it's a great starting place for clients.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I really like that too, especially as that value set, was built out by the First Affirmative team. I think it's a fantastic starting point as well. And then for Nigel, maybe that's something that you and we can talk a little bit, more in depth, one-on-one about that particular situation. I might be able to give a few more examples or tips and tricks here for actual conversations. Great questions, though. And then I think also to kind of just bring this right back around is, as an advisor, when that happens, or you have the situation of the filmmaker that has a lot of things that they don't want to have incorporated in the portfolio, is you've got the whole First Affirmative team to help you. You're not on your own. You've got all of their past experience, and their sort of deep knowledge of this space to help you along the way. I think that's what's really neat. I don't know that is a common thing at some other places, and I think it's something that certainly is helpful with this as you start to navigate this. So kind of going forward here, we've got so we went through the values picker, grabbed a set, added a couple more in to really reflect that client's values. And the fine tuning is not just to add in additional things. It could be to remove, hey, the fossil fuel industry, like a little bit of exposure to the utility companies is okay. Maybe I just want to avoid the fossil fuel extractor type companies. So then within the fine tuning, you can adjust those things. YourStake has a very vast number of metrics where you can really get very in detail or a little bit more broader on certain issues. So coming to this risk page is really determining what is going to be the equity bond split, or what kind of benchmark are we starting with for the constructing the portfolio. And if you have your own risk tolerance questionnaire, you could certainly use that. Whatever the results were, you would just select the appropriate benchmark. You also have access, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Orion piece to VADIS, but their risk intelligence questionnaire, and that's really just the used to be called hidden levers, but it bounces you into this, and then you can of course go through that with your prospect. YourStake also has a risk tolerance questionnaire that you can utilize. So you've got some options But in this particular case, maybe the risk piece, I had my own sort of proprietary questionnaire, and this is their Roth. We're thinking about this sort of as a whole household level. So with their Roth account, this is where I want to be the most aggressive. So I'm selecting that as the benchmark. We come into the review, and this is where we have, a couple of places that we can branch off. So here is where I can just submit this to First Affirmative. This option, I think, is the best option when this account is maybe a taxable account. And there are, of course, some tax transition considerations for this particular account. Submitting this or clicking this button essentially starts off a Salesforce sort of case management. So this will alert the First Affirmative team that there's a portfolio here. They will get all of the details that we just went through, all of, the values, any specific inclusions, exclusions, what type of account it is, and that sort of thing. And then with that Salesforce case is where you as the advisor can sort of make your notes or your comments. First Affirmative will also do the same. And we'll talk a little bit more too about the Salesforce piece here in just a moment, but that's what this button is doing. It's saying, First Affirmative, please optimize this portfolio. And if there are tax considerations, I'm going to note that in the Salesforce case. I'll get a notification of it, and then I just use that case going forward. And then the Optimize an Advisor core is where we've worked with the First Affirmative team using their, their knowledge base for creating sort of the factors or using particular factors to create an optimized portfolio. So we're going to use this here today. And this takes you into the advisor core page. I want to pause here for just a moment to ask, Ken, a couple questions. When you're with, your prospect and you go through that questionnaire, do you typically come into, into advisor core and create that optimized portfolio here so they can at least see what that could look like? Is that your typical process or okay?
Yes, yeah, that's the process. You would get a snapshot of their current portfolio, the held away account, right? And you'd build them out a portfolio with First Affirmative.
Yep.
Bring it into Advisor Core, and then you would compare all three of these portfolios. So you'd have your benchmark, your held away, their current portfolio, and then the portfolio that you've built out for them with them together.
Yep.
And you show them the differences and what you have to offer. And typically it's extremely robust and quite eye-opening for them.
Yep.
Very powerful tool that we can build out a whole entire proposal that's quite advanced in less than 10 minutes. So it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I really like, for those of you on the call that maybe hasn't come into Advisor Core in a few months or something, we added that ability to, I have my prospects' current holdings. So this is their Roth account held at, let's just say, Schwab. So I can see what they've got now. They've got a lot of mutual funds, some ETFs in there, but I can pull that in. And while I'm doing that, I've pulled in their current holdings because I uploaded their statement that they shared with me earlier today. The benchmark is going to be that third sort of portfolio in the comparison. And what's happening right now is we are creating an optimized portfolio based upon our the risk tolerance and of course the values, if there were any specific security inclusions or exclusions. So all of that carried over from that, steps 1 through 4. And our tools are creating this optimized portfolio. I want to take just a second to talk about this, the benchmark. I think there may have been some questions. I know I've seen the chat box open. I'm not able to look at those right now, but that's typically what I get questions on. When you are working with clients, do they ask about what is a benchmark, or what's the start? What's the start of all of this?
Yeah, if they do have a question about the benchmark, I let them know that is also customized. The VADIS default universe is a modified version of the MSCI ACWI. So it has screening already applied, and some thought put into it. So it's a concentrated version of a global diversified index. Yeah. And so that's what we have here with in various allocation.
Yep. So what we're going to get is also a well-diversified portfolio. And like Ken mentioned, it's, essentially the MSCI ACWI, that's the starting point. And then of course there's sort of that initial layer of screens that are applied to remove particular companies, or we may need to switch out an international holding for its ADR, those types of things. But you can kind of think of it as that starting point is a global equity index like ACWI. So that's an incredibly large number of companies to start with. And what the optimization process does is we're aiming to get somewhere around 230 individual stocks for the equity portion, of the portfolio. And I think, is that typically what you see, Ken, around at 230 for the companies, maybe give or take a few here and there, depending on screen set?
And that's, and thusly, that's why the minimums at Apex are 25,000. There's no compromise on that, because it doesn't make sense to build out the portfolio anything under that. And just to touch back upon the benchmark, if you do decide to use this tool, there's a very valuable piece of information that First Affirmative has put together. It's called the Book of VADIS, and that'll teach you more about the benchmarking and how everything is made.
Yep, I agree. And in that, I know that they spent an incredible amount of time putting that together, but that also is a fantastic resource for someone that's utilizing VADIS to go in there and see what some of the metrics that are very broad will do in terms of, okay, we've just, by this one particular metric, we've thrown out an incredible number of mega cap or large cap companies. So that's a really great reference to have too. I think it's really great to, view that, look at it, have that sort of as an available resource as you go through, as you're starting with, this VADIS workflow too. So this optimization takes a little bit of time, right? Because we're going through an incredible number of factors to come up with this optimization. So I have taken the liberty of creating one. So the casserole's done, right? We put it in the oven, magically it is done. So we went through this exercise earlier, and what I want to do is just go through what that optimized portfolio would look like. Before we get into that, Ken, any comments or anything to add here?
No, I'm hungry. Let's jump over to that casserole. What do you got?
Okay. So
let's go, Rob.
So again, we're looking at 3 portfolios here. This particular value set, based upon their values, yielded in one sector or more, could potentially be more, having a little bit more exposure than what the benchmark started with. We have a really nice pretty low tracking error, given the value set for this was, 10, 12 broader values or individual metrics. But this warning is just to let me know, hey, there is a particular sector or more that could have been skewed because the value set had to take away from some other sectors. So what I, as the advisor, have, I can go back into the values workflow and maybe make some adjustments. Maybe instead of animal in the animal rights sort of arena, instead of animal exploitation, which is going to touch so many things. It's looking at pharmaceutical companies for animal testing, beauty companies for animal testing. It's looking at, is the company involved in leather, hide, that type of thing? So you can imagine a lot of things are removed. So maybe we go back in and say, let's just make sure that companies that are involved in, non-medical animal testing, so your beauty companies, and maybe the dairy industry or the meat producers. So I can go back in and change that at this point. This is just a nice to know. We're still going to have a really, close tracking error. So the market cap's going to be very similar, what we want.
And Robyn, could you just quickly describe what the tracking error means here?
Yes. So the tracking error here is where we're looking at the returns of what the optimized portfolio is going to be compared to its benchmark. In this case, it's, an aggressive benchmark. So, if we recall, we started with thousands of companies in the benchmark. We've had to reduce that down to about 230. So the idea of direct indexing is really to track that, which we'll see here in just a moment, but to track those returns and those market cap allocations, everything as closely as possible.
Right. And so we pay attention to this number, especially if your client is bringing over large legacy positions and we're doing a tax transition strategy over the course of 5 years. This tracking error, this number will decrease over those 5 years as you get closer and closer to the optimized allocation.
Yep. Great comments. Risk. So as I can see, my client's current Roth is very moderate. And with their, questionnaire and looking at this as an overall sort of household, at the household level, Ken, is this something that you see often or occasionally where someone's Roth in particular is much more moderate than maybe it should be? Or vice versa, like in terms of like a taxable account, maybe that's where we see the taxable account being a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, right. Typically, yeah. I mean, if it depends on how many the variation in accounts and sizes, and there's a number of different factors that goes in that would go into making a decision to increase the equities exposure in their Roth. But using an asset location approach, which YourStake provides a great tool for that as well. We're able to manage these accounts from the household level, providing additional value to the client. So yes, this is something that we would see. Probably the difference not so emphasized here, but yes, this is definitely something that we'll,
and then and just to point out, within the application, you can click on these to see the risk levels of the individual holdings in all three, of the portfolios. So values alignment, this, kind of being star here. What I want to do is just remove the benchmark. So what I'm looking at here is what the client currently owns compared to the optimized portfolio. We can see that this is only about 40% aligned to what their values are. this, very, stark contrast. So what I can do is launch into a full values report, and I've already got that pulled up too. So what we're looking at is the portfolio compared to its benchmark. I can easily change this, but just to give this a look, because I think this is also really excellent to see, just the benchmark and what has been optimized, seeing, all of those individual issues. I've got either no or a lot less or more exposure in this is an inclusionary metric. And so this is where within the YourStake application, of course, I can come in here and just grab that prospect's current holdings. And this, I think, is where it's, quite meaningful too, to show. And Ken, is this what you like to show or tend to go to?
This is a standard step in my prospect to client pipeline. This would be the first. If a client truly cares about values alignment with their portfolio, this is the most impactful report that you can show them prior to signing the account opening documents. Yep. If they see this and they don't have the capability at whomever is managing their money at the time, and you do, and you can show real world impact and go as deep into it as they'd like to, so that you can truly prove to them that this is having real world impact. Then this is one of the most powerful tools that I've used over the years.
Yeah, excellent. I like to, if you want to see where is the tobacco exposure coming from in what the prospect currently holds, or where is, the military weapon exposure coming from? They owned mutual funds and ETFs. So what I can do as an advisor is say, well, we won't have that exposure in this optimized portfolio. But if you're interested and intrigued to see those types of companies, like where they're at in your portfolio, we just have to drill in. And then we can look at any of these funds to see the individual holdings. So you really just kind of have to click through to get them, to see where that exposure is coming from.
And Robyn, could you also quickly show the metaphor report? Nigel wanted to see those, and Nigel, we'll follow up with the professional because it's just a little bit longer. I know we're tight on time. But this is kind of a nifty report where we really first started.
Yep. Yeah, this is great. This is, those metrics, so to speak, that are more tangible, right? I can feel an asthma attack a little bit easier than I can feel 30% less exposure to toxic air pollution. The companies in a portfolio that are releasing pollution into the air. So this can be, a really meaningful report as well, for someone to see something in real terms, not just not just 80% less, 50% more, those types of things. We compute an actual event from exposure, whether there's more or less, of course, depending on the metric, more or less being good or bad.
Thank you, Robyn, for the detour.
Yep, of course. So coming back here, just want to go through quickly the different sort of portfolio analytics that you're going to get, not just sort of the breakdown of the optimized portfolio in terms of values, but also, what's the asset class breakdown look like? And this was the prospect's current portfolio. And then what do the returns look like? I can simply click off the benchmark. So here's where we're seeing, that if this portfolio existed 10 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you can also look at it like a bar chart. And I can always click off the benchmark. So I'm just comparing, what the prospect currently has compared to that optimized portfolio. And then, of course, we've got trailing volatility, risk return, those market cap exposures, style categories, all these different analytics that you can get straight into, let me generate this report for my client if they're not with me, or if they are with me and I just want to have, a report that I can share with them. They can go back to whatever the case may be, just like you normally would, generate that report, open it. It is everything here that we looked at in this report. Now, sort of bringing it back around, let's say I talk with my client, we're good with the holdings, I can print out the holdings so I can see exactly the companies that will be in the portfolio. If I like that, I submit the portfolio here to First Affirmative. This will what kick off that Salesforce case. So the case management part coming into play right here. So I think with that, Ken, I know we've only got a minute or two left, but can you quickly just maybe comment or talk about what happens now? Once the portfolio is submitted to First Affirmative, that Salesforce case is created, then what happens? Maybe that's where you make your comments about any tax transition needs. What does First Affirmative kind of get to you or do through Salesforce?
Right. So then you'll go through the account opening process with First Affirmative. And so you'll compile the list of account opening documents that are needed for Apex or Schwab, and they'll draft you an IPS to share with your client as well. And then you can fill that out with your client, send through DocuSign, however you do that. And those accounts will be opened, and an Orion login will be issued to you and the client. And so it's Orion's used as the aggregator between custodians. It's also used for a document vault for billing and YourStake reports. So when reporting performance quarterly reports, billing, invoicing, all those are stored in the Orion document vault. So it's really just your station for almost everything. So I just go between Orion and YourStake for almost all of my monitoring needs.
Yep. Excellent. So I think too, to just kind of reiterate what you said is, again, the First Affirmative team is helping you with opening the accounts, making sure you have the documents that you need to open an account, and any documents that the client, may potentially need to sign or at least, view, obtain, all those sorts of things is what, First Affirmative is there to help you with. Yeah, excellent. And just for the folks, on the call here, a couple of, additional things, resources. These are on our websites, and the QR code here is that's me. You'd have kind of a one-on-one demonstration of the application, but I know there were a ton of questions in the in the chat. And Jack, if you are gracious enough to kind of compile all of those, and we'll certainly get answers out to everyone. But if there are folks left on the call, if you didn't drop off already, I'm free for, another couple of minutes to answer a few quick ones. But, would also like to say that, Ken, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's also been really fun to see all of your wins, with this VADIS workflow, but also, having a lot of these things, just being able to talk to you about how do you use this, give me some, real world instances, and, what's helpful going through this is certainly helpful, for us too, as we try and deliver at least, the technology side of things for everyone.
Of course.
Well,
and you go ahead, Ken. This is your
show.
Go
ahead, Jack. Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, I added the links to these two materials in the Zoom chat if you want to see it and download it. So that's in the Zoom chat. But Ken, can you take it away, and then I'll get back to what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful for the First Affirmative team and for the people at YourStake for actually making this a reality, so that we can really actually do this for our clients. It's unbelievable. I'm so grateful, and it blows my mind every day that the tools that they create and continue to work on and hone and listen. They really listen to their advisors when they're. So if you have any questions or suggestions, talk to these people, and
Yeah.
they know how to listen, which is amazing. And so I'm grateful. So thank you so much for your time and your efforts in this space.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you. So some of the questions we'll follow up separately. I know a few we can tackle here. One was from Scott. Is there a backside for reporting performance with a client for VADIS on Orion?
Yes.
We also have
Yeah.
members of the First Affirmative team as well to help answer questions.
Yeah.
Should you have them?
Well, I mean, it's pretty basic. Yeah, I mean, it directly. I mean, in real time, it's aggregated right into your Orion dashboard, and you can customize those widgets to, you know, however deep you want to go in Orion. But yeah, there is performance reporting directly in Orion.
Yeah.
So
And First Affirmative runs quarterly compliance, or excuse me, performance reports and puts them in your client's portal in Orion.
Jack, do you have a stack?
I mean, just a sec. Scott, did you come off mute to ask another question? You're welcome to.
Oh, good. No, I just wanted to make sure, like, I know the front side is for the client on Orion. I just want to make sure, like, there's a back entrance where we as an advisor enter in.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
For that?
I think I can take that. Yeah, you would have your own login, your sort of advisor login, and then your client would have their own login to see only their, reports and their things. So
Do we like, is that through you guys for the Orion, or for our broker dealer, or how do we kind of get that established?
It's through First Affirmative.
Okay.
yeah.
So the any customer support would be through you all to call you for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe before I go to the preceded questions, if there are any questions, since we have the whole team here, around what all First Affirmative can cover, or what happens when you leave kind of the YourStake workflow and kind of do continual monitoring with First Affirmative. We have so many bright minds here that live in the day-to-day. So please feel free to ask any questions about that. So I'll give it a minute. And then if no one has any questions about that right now, then I'll go into some other questions here, if that makes sense.
I had a question about, like, the optimization. It seems like there's such a large universe. Every time you put it's like infinite almost in terms of the stock selection that I noticed that comes back if you tweak one metric or like one values, set. The variance in the stocks that come back. I mean, I didn't know if there's any kind of, formula around that. It just seemed like I couldn't believe one portfolio yielded all these stocks I had never seen when I had run portfolios for another one. And I was like, wow, these are pretty, these seem like, either, renewable energy kind of companies that didn't necessarily appear the first time. And I didn't know if it was it was definitely due to the optimization process, but I was just, I don't know if that really articulates what I'm trying to get at.
Is
Yes.
Teresa still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here. So Scott, the optimizer is designed to minimize the tracking error of the portfolio relative to the benchmark. So as values metrics are added or subtracted, and those companies are added to or subtracted from the client-specific investment universe, the outcome, the portfolio that's delivered, will look significantly different. And the way you can think about it is the starting point is always the same. It's a very broad investment universe of more than 3,000 companies. And then that gets narrowed down by the value set that's chosen. So depending on the metrics you choose, company A or company B or company C may or may not be in that client-specific investment universe. And then the optimizer takes whatever's in that universe and incorporates any inclusion metrics. So those climate-specific companies are probably in clean energy companies metric. And if it's in there, they will be overweight. If it's not in there, you may not see them at all. And so that's the reason that you're getting very different portfolios by tweaking only a limited number of things. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just, it was like it opened up a whole new world. I was like, wow, look at all these shiny new stocks I didn't see the first time. Like, I just like to know what's in there. You know, I don't have to go through every single stock, but I just noticed some companies that I thought, oh, these are really cool. Why somehow they weren't optimized. It seemed like the client's values were relatively the same, but they weren't necessarily included in portfolio A.
Yes. So if they're relatively the same and not the same, you will get a different portfolio. If there are significant market movements, you will get a different portfolio.
And that has to do with the tracking error, this whole thing of how it optimizes. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're trying to minimize the tracking error, and at the same time, we do try to maximize risk-adjusted returns, obviously, but the tracking error piece is the most important piece of a mean variance optimization, which is what this is.
Okay, good to get in the weeds with you, Teresa.
Oh, yes. Don't tempt me.
Thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Jack, anything? Or anyone else on the call that?
Yeah, that supersedes. So anyone can cut into me if you are live and have questions that maybe you didn't precede. Please cut me off and unmute yourself or throw it in the chat. But one question we'd gotten before that I kind of liked was how to balance onboarding efficiency with bespoke overload risk. So kind of reframing this in the persona portfolio. So the personas that come out of the values questionnaire versus like deep bespoke customization and really kind of opening the weeds of options. Maybe Ken, you have some good thoughts on how you manage that with clients, or Robyn as well. You've had a lot of these conversations with advisors too.
Sorry, one more time, Jack.
Yeah, kind of balancing wanting to offer a very complex bespoke portfolio for people that want everything, but also managing kind of that process of offering that back and forth when sometimes kind of persona portfolios, we kind of called them, can do the trick for a client where it's a little bit less upfront work because you're working with pre-built personas that align pretty well from the questionnaire. So how do you manage offering those and balancing that?
I feel the best way to go through the process is to offer the client the VADIS screens, the First Affirmative VADIS screens. And then over the years, you'll get to know your client more and more. They're not going to come into the gate that hot. Just in my experience, it's not going to be a huge list of exclusions right off the bat with, this, that, and the other. The VADIS screens are comprehensive, and they're also cohesive. They're designed in a way that is designed with VADIS in mind. So I like that as a starting place, and then going from there. I mean, you're not. What are you going to do? Go look at someone's social media profile, which is a snapshot into that time of them. Like it's everyone's perspective changes with all the information that goes into our eye holes and our ear holes. And, if we're able to listen to them, everything's going to adapt over time. And if you have a really trusting relationship with your client, there's a level of honesty there that's untouched. We're dealing with all the money that they have. So, incorporating their values into that is very special to them as well. And it provides them an extra level of security. And so the level of intimacy that you get to have with your client is quite unique and rare. So if there does, down the road, if there does come a time where I've seen people's perspectives completely flip 100%, and then we're able to accommodate that with VADIS. It's quite amazing. I mean, typically you might lose a client that way. I've also been at other firms where the firm's agenda or ideology makes them lose clients. So I just like to just listen to the client and be open and non-judgmental, and that's where I come from. It's just the way that I do it.
I think too, to add to that, like the back and forth. So when we ran, the optimizations, our value sets were kind of in the green. Once we get into the yellow and the red, and we click on that, optimize in advisor, like this page will also, tell us, hey, you've selected some particular metrics that is yielding in not on this, when you click on it, optimize an advisor core. And if you come in here, there's going to be a message that says, these are the particular metrics that are making your portfolio that sort of unbalanced, or it's removing a lot of, the mega caps or the large cap companies. You may want to go back to your client about that. So what that step does is it gives you exactly what is happening. And if you, miss that or what have you, the First Affirmative team, when they see that value set, they'll also know right away, these are the specific metrics. So you don't have to try and guess which metric is making this, is removing a ton of companies and that sort of thing. They'll know that right away. So you can have that list of those rather difficult metrics to talk with your client about, sort of that one time, going back to them with, here's the metrics that are, really kicking out a ton of companies. And it may be the case, and Ken, maybe you've had this, where the value set is, something that they really don't want to budge on. And then that is, I think, another conversation, a little bit different conversation to have with the client in terms of, what this portfolio is now going to look like. It's not going to be tracking that starting benchmark, that global equity portfolio. It's going to be more of a, basket of small and mid cap companies.
Well, it's then where we have to have that conversation with them if they don't want to budge. And typically it's in the cases where they say, you know what, I mean, on this particular call, I can't speak on individual securities, but if they don't want to hold an entire sector of name whatever it may be, and our metric meter falls in the red, then we're going to have to have that discussion with them. And we have a document that we would then sign with the client in order to make them aware and get it written, get it down on paper, ink and paper that we've had this conversation, that it will affect, it's highly likely that it'll affect the performance of the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's an addendum that must be signed, an addendum to the IPS that must be signed by both the client and the advisor if a red metric meter is used in the optimization. And it basically says that you acknowledge that you are removing a significant number of companies from the investment universe and that the performance may be different than the benchmark over a certain period of time.
Mhm.
Teresa,
Right, so-
could you comment briefly on rebalancing in the portfolio? We don't know what this year is going to bring in terms of volatility. There probably is going to be some. What does that look like again for kind of the parameters you set were with rebalancing?
So we generally rebalance annually, and by rebalance we mean rerun the value set. So there might have been changes within each of the metrics chosen. So different companies may come in or come out as a result of that. And then we go back to the advisor and ask them if there are any changes to the risk level. So this is a complete rebalancing of the portfolio after checking with the advisor and he or she with their client, I'm going to guess. And so that's done annually. We have not run into a situation where the market movements have been so dramatic that it resulted in a rebalance on an interim basis. And part of the reason for that is that these portfolios are aligned with the market to start. So it's really unlikely that the portfolio is going to do some weird thing and it's going to look so different than its benchmark, which is really what you're targeting when you invest in a values aligned direct index portfolio.
My question wasn't probably properly phrased. It's more about the risk of, because let's say you do something like a 65-35 and then the market goes up 30% this year. And so now,
if only.
Well, I'm trying to be positive, right? It could go the other way. I didn't want to say that. I wanted to, right?
No, I understand.
So now we're closing in on 72% equities, right? Are you going to balance that back?
We would balance it back, and if there are flows, we're constantly balancing it back. So if you have an account that has monthly flows into it or quarterly flows into it, we're always rebalancing back to that target. If we do get, a 30% move in the market in 3 months or something, then we will be optimizing a lot of portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
So we do monitor it. We haven't had we haven't seen anything like that where we got such skewed portfolios over a short period of time. And I'm actually going to have to drop off in a few minutes. So if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much,
Thank you,
Teresa.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Nice seeing you again.
Yeah, you too, Ken.
Robyn and Ken,
Thanks,
thank
Scott.
you.